Hi, good morning, everyone. We introduced ourselves last night, and perhaps my kind of key takeaway was that I was just very lucky in my choice 30 years ago to build a career in analytics, and finally it's paid off. By way of a sort of preface, though, to talking about tools, I want to start and say a little bit about life in analytics 30 years ago. So I first started working at J. Walter Thompson, which was an advertising agency at the time, big global ad agency. And I was building time series econometrics marketing mix models. And we were building models with weekly or even monthly data, one brand at a time. And I had a VAX mainframe computer in the basement of our building. And we'd maybe build a candidate model with a set of variables, add stock, decay, lag-dependent variable, those kind of factors in the model. And very excitedly, we'd key into the green screen what the model might be in terms of the variables, and then run down to the basement and tear off the sprocket paper and kind of look at the model and look at the t-stats. P-values hadn't been invented, so we looked at t-stats. And we'd look at the Durbin-Watson, and hasn't quite worked out. And you go back up, and you try again, type in another candidate model with some different lags, different decays, and see what would happen. And to build a model, one brand at a time, would take literally weeks. Just build one model, one brand. And now, with the tools that we have, we can look at 40,000 SKUs in a matter of minutes. And that's because of toolification. And building tools has been a big part of my career journey from those early days in advertising, and then my experience with Accenture and integrating analytics tools with ERP type tools, so SAP, Oracle, and so on. More recently, Salesforce. And I think in terms of really delivering value into my clients' organizations, it is tools that matter almost more than anything else. And no matter how great the analytics is, it's tools that actually embed that value in the organization. And so we're going to talk a little bit about tools and our tool partnership. I've been working with UGM now for the last 18 months or so, and we've developed a set of retail analytics tools around pricing, promo, schemix, and space allocation. Next up is eCom for RFM modeling. And I think they are an incredibly powerful set of tools that actually mean that the analytics we're doing really is embedded in our client's organization. So if I think about my challenges as a consultant coming into my client's organization, in essence, they're exactly the same as yours. And I suppose I'm alert to the whole story you heard this morning that it's important to understand the business context. It's important to understand the exam question, not jump in too fast to the solution and the tool. But nevertheless, there are only a certain number of exam questions in retail. You know, there's pricing, promo, schemix, space, labor, demand forecasting. You know, maybe there's 15, 20 things you need to look at. And yes, you need to understand the context and understand quite how the client, in my case, your internal organization, is phrasing the question. But actually, if you have a set of tools that answer each one of those questions, that's a kind of real head start in terms of having replicable, scalable solutions to answering, these key questions. Secondly, we can answer those questions by doing some analytics in ad hoc fashion, go and build some models in R, and then create a PowerPoint presentation that says, hey, stop advertising on TV, spend more on digital, maybe change your seasonality, how you're spending, change your price ladder, cheaper entry point, stretch at the top, and so you can have a set of recommendations. Now, the problem with PowerPoint is twofold. First of all, it tends to bounce off the organization. You sort of leave a report that just gathers dust on someone's shelf. And secondly, at best, it's a one-off hit. If you really do deliver changing the organization, it's a one-off reset in terms of prices changing or delisting some unproductive SKUs. Whereas if you put a tool into the organization, you're developing an ongoing capability that lasts long after I've left and we've sent the invoice, and that the benefits of our consulting project can remain in the organization. Another problem is that every time you do a project, it's a little bit different. You start looking at, well, how do you figure out how SKUs cannibalize each other? Or do you look at price comparison based on units or volume, pack format, liters? There's different ways of doing these projects. And if you do them all differently every time, some errors can creep in. You're recruiting new guys into your team. You don't always have the resources or the opportunity to constantly train those people or have a manual how to do this work. But if you have a tool, you can have an error-free and repeatable approach codified in that tool with the right way of weighting SKUs, the right way of figuring out cannibalization across different SKU formats. And that's something that even relatively junior folks in the organization can run with limited supervision. And I suppose the other thing I'd say is that once you've done 10 projects on grocery SKU rat, you do figure out there's a right way or a wrong way of doing this. And I think I said last night that 90% of our projects go well. But the 10% that don't, that's a learning experience. Now, if you're always building models in an ad hoc way, you're not capturing that learning experience. But if you have a tool that actually codifies that approach, it's able to take advantage of the good and the bad in terms of project experiences you've had. So I think, rather than just doing projects on an ad hoc basis, actually having a tool is a much, much better way of doing this work. Now, as consultants, and particularly if I think back to my 10 years or so at Accenture, you can spend time installing ERP systems, SAP to pick on one, and you can have tools that look at promotion management, pricing, demand forecasting, but ERP systems tend to be immensely expensive, frequently $20, $30, $40, $50 million to implement. And they are very inflexible, very unwieldy, and actually require quite a lot of configuration in terms of integrating with your other systems in the organization. And I suppose as I go around the world working with my clients, and I work with some of the world's biggest retailers, I work with clients like Walmart Jet, Carrefour in Europe, Sainsbury's in the UK. What I hear is a demand for what I would call right-sized tools. So tools that are faster and cheaper and easier to implement than sort of classic ERP. Tools that are flexible, so can be reconfigured, adding new lines of SKUs in very easily as opposed to a kind of whole sort of IT program to put in a new SKU. Industrial strength, so they had to be able to look at 300 stores, 1,000 categories, 100,000 SKUs, and not just kind of sort of the approach of flimsy spreadsheets, but they need to be fast. So the tools that we've actually developed in our partnership with UGAM, as with a large UK retailer, this order of magnitude in terms of number of stores and SKU mix. And in one afternoon, we analyzed price in terms of new price ladders, promo in terms of do's and don'ts, what promo was working, what wasn't, space allocation, and SKU rationalization, so the sort of least productive 10% of SKUs. And once we built the data cube, that took about 3 hours to do. The PowerPoint took a bit longer to write afterwards, but the actual analytics. And that's the power of these tools. They can be super fast. The benefits in terms of the exam question use cases are enormous. Looking at stretching price ladders, afternoon's work can give you a 10% margin increase. SKU rationalization, afternoon's work using this kind of tool set, 5% margin increase. So they are fast and highly productive, but it also means you can run them frequently. This isn't something you do as a once every 2 year reset. The power of these kind of tools is that pretty much once a quarter, you can have a reset and actually get big kind of margin benefits from doing so. We talked about design-led thinking and sort of intersectional analytics, and I think one of the things I hope we've achieved with the tools is that they are very visual and very kind of impactful for senior leadership. And people at sort of CXO level are very impatient. They don't want to see a sort of table of numbers. What they like is nice color-coded heat maps or nice kind of curves that are easy to understand. And so we've very much designed these tools to be highly visual and therefore very easy to get traction with kind of senior audiences. And it's worthwhile saying that actually the tools that I use in consulting projects are exactly the same tools that we then put into clients and leave behind. So there's no distinction between the sort of professional strength tools that we're using and the tools that we're leaving behind at our clients. They're exactly the same tools. And I think that convergence really is a credit to how user-friendly these tools are, that there's no distinction between the sort of analytics professionals in a consulting organization and our users at our